Good evening. Welcome to Blockchain Banter, episode 48, second round of the great debate slash discussion. What's happening, Chris? How you doing, bro?
Really good, man. I'm really looking forward to this one. I've been looking forward to this one since last week's episode because I don't know. It did come to an end, obviously, but especially with Shy starting to get into the sort of quantum aspects of what Kaspa could possibly achieve or be resilient against. I thought it was just really exciting to carry that on, and hopefully we have Gaurav here coming here today. He was actually the person that made me start thinking about sort of the quantum resilience side of things, and seems like an extremely smart chap. So I think hopefully he's going to come today, and then him and Shai can have a discussion, and then we can all have Chat GPT and Grok in the background trying to work out exactly what everyone's saying. But no, really, really looking forward to it, man.
Likewise, man. Especially the Chat GPT and Grok part. That's where I'm going to do the most learning. I'm not going to lie. But it's been a hell of a week building up to this episode and dealing with it in the background. The excitement was flaring, especially with listening back to last episode. Like you say, it did spice things up a little bit towards the end with what you just said. Sorry, I've just got a notification. Yes. Sorry, I just got distracted there. My bad. So I just got hit up with a disconnection. I thought I was about to lose a space, so that's what distracted me. But we're good. We're good. Going back to what I was saying, it was a bit spicy last week when I started to understand it a little bit more, listening back, and I'm looking forward to learning more. Is the short end of what I was trying to say.
Definitely, man, and it is exciting stuff. Like the thing is, it's with the quantum side of things, or being quantum resilient. Again, I know nothing about it. Certainly not the technical side of it, which is why it's amazing to have Shai here, because Shai's actually got a PhD in quantum cryptography, so he certainly knows what he's talking about. Shai, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing fine. I missed the start. I remember you told me there is going to be some other guy here who is from the Bitcoin side who also deals with quantum resilience.
Yeah, his name's Gaurav. I'm hoping he is going to join us. He did repost the tweet I put out about him being on, so it might be just a bit delayed, but we'll try get him up as soon as possible, definitely.
I hope so too, because otherwise I'm afraid I'm going to find myself monologuing here.
Still, your monologues are good, Shai. We always learn something from them. I mean, you've been putting out some really good stuff recently on X anyway, and on YouTube. So that's a good thing to remind people. Everyone here, if you make your way over to Shai's YouTube channel, that would be incredible, because it really does help with content creators when you start liking and following them and things like that, and it costs you nothing. So certainly do that. Shai does a lot for us in the Kaspa community. So yeah, all it takes is a like and a follow. I can see Gaurav's in the audience. If you just request to come up, Gaurav, and then we can get you up here as well. It'd be fantastic.
Maybe. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to take over. Sorry.
No, it's fine, Shai. Go ahead.
I just thought me and Gaurav, we don't know each other, so maybe we'll say something to each other about our background and what we do.
Yeah, 100%. It'd be great to get to know each other. It is a nice space.
Hey guys, sorry, I'm just connecting. I know I'm a little bit late. Thanks for the invitation, Chris.
No problem. Really excited to have you up here, to be honest with you, man. And I know we spoke briefly in a Bitcoin focused space, and that's exactly why I thought it'd be great to get you here as well, because obviously Shai knows what he's talking about when it comes to quantum cryptography, and you had some incredible questions that I obviously couldn't answer because you're much smarter than I am. So between the two of you, we may be able to solve the quantum problem. But yeah, if you could both introduce yourselves, that would be fantastic. Shai, I suppose we'll start with you. If you could just say your background, and then we'll move to Gaurav.
Okay, so I'm Shai. I'm one of the original contributors to Kaspa, and simultaneously, I did my PhD with Dr. Or Satat and Professor Dorita Aronov, co-advisory, and I did it in quantum cryptography. I researched several questions in my PhD dissertation, but one of them, which I think is very relevant to this conversation, is we researched the problem of quantum procrastinators. Essentially, how can you help people who forgot or didn't have a chance to migrate their money, their coin, from a pre-quantum address to a post-quantum address, and one day they woke up and realized that all their money is in a pre-quantum address, but everybody has a quantum computer in their garage. So whether and how can you help these people? And we came up with a protocol called the Lifted Foxcoin, which actually solves this problem. Obviously, it has some strong trade-offs, but it allows securely operating without post-quantum signatures at all in the presence of quantum adversaries. And in many cases, it also allows saving money, even though it seems completely quantum compromised. So I'd love to talk a little about that at some point. And I'm not an expert on post-quantum cryptography. For me, it's a black box. But I am very interested in what you can do with it on the blockchain.
Brilliant introduction. Thank you for that, Shai. And yeah, Gaurav, if we could have a bit of your background as well, please, and then we can get into the questions.
Sure. Thanks for the invitation. It's my pleasure to meet you, Shai. And you prefer to be called Shai, right? Not Dr. Deshay?
Dr. Wyborski is my father.
Okay. All right. Okay, so a brief background about myself. Academically and professionally, I'm a scientist in computational genetics. The person who was handling the servers in my lab in Cleveland first introduced me to Satoshi's white paper. That was in 2010. I was looking for decentralized ways to do protein folding. At that time, there was only one other solution in Pandey's lab in Stanford, and he had rejected my request to fold the protein our lab had to fold. Anyway, that's how I was introduced to Bitcoin. I started working on BitSolve and released the code in around 2013. One way to describe BitSolve is it's a Turing complete decentralized system that doesn't require the entire network to do all the computation like Ethereum does. It just didn't work for protein folding because it was very computationally intensive. After BitSolve, I co-founded a company called Everledger, where we tried to solve the problem of putting objects onto the blockchain. We used Bitcoin because Ethereum didn't exist. I guess you could describe it as a precursor to NFTs, a little bit of, except objects that reside in the real world, the tactile world. After Everledger, I moved on to a company called Atlas, where we tried to bring cryptocurrency to developing countries. The first country was Ghana. That was around 2017. I'd kind of had enough of the startup world, so I left the crypto industry. I had a brief stint back into crypto in London in 2019, but I've kind of been in the sidelines since 2017. Thanks.
Awesome. That's an amazing background as well. So, and I think that's really interesting. Actually, you got into Bitcoin to actually solve a problem that you had with your business with protein folding. I'm not going to pretend I know what that is, but it's just cool that that's why you got into it. Because I think a lot of the adoption from crypto will actually come from actually companies and businesses utilizing crypto in the first place. So yeah, it's cool to see that adoption, definitely. So yeah, I mean, I might just let you and Shai speak because you'll definitely know a lot more about what you actually the quality of the questions you want to ask than I ever would be able to. So yeah, is that okay to do?
Sure. Can I just start with the questions? I have a lot of questions, obviously.
I just
Or
want to
Shai?
add before we dive in, if anyone on stage wants to jump in, ask a question or join in the conversation, just put your hand up and we get you right involved.
Yeah, that's a good point. I sort of missed that last time. Yeah, if because we do have a good few people on stage. You can see Ashton, Wolfie, Landy, Wolf, and Alex as well. Yeah, so thanks you guys for all joining. But yeah, so if you do have any questions while this conversation's going on, certainly put your hand up and join in as well. It'd be fantastic to get everyone's opinions on this. But yeah, apart from that, I'll let Gaurav start asking his questions.
Awesome. Shai, first of all, congratulations on your major release. I can see that version 1.0 was released recently. I've been actually looking at the code and trying to get it Dockerized so I can run some simulations on it for the last 2 days. I just got introduced to Kaspa, I think, a few days ago. But yeah, Rust was, I think, a great choice for the language. I also noticed that the public key, and please correct me if any of these assumptions are wrong because I just started looking at the code. I noticed that the public keys, the decision was made to keep them raw instead of any kind of further protection like a hash digest. Could you explain your rationale why that was chosen?
Okay, so first of all, I just want to give credit where credit is due. The decision and the release of Rust, the Rusty Kaspa crew, I wasn't a part of it. I looked from the sidelines with a lot of appreciation and lended a bit of help when I could, but I can't take credit for it. So I'll just accept your thanks on behalf of the community and the developers community. Regarding using raw signatures and not hashing the signatures, this wasn't my decision as well. And I think it came from two reasons. One is because we wanted at some point to use BLS. And the other is that we followed I think I didn't implement this part. I wasn't part of the specification either, but I think they wanted to follow the taproot design, and this is why the signatures are in the clear. I'll just for people in the crowd who don't know, usually or most of the time in Bitcoin, you don't actually post the public key of your signature. You know, in a signature scheme, you have a public key and a secret key. You keep the secret key to yourself and you give everyone the public key, and then you can sign stuff with the secret key, and anyone can verify it with the public key. Now, in Bitcoin, there is a type of transaction called P2PKH, pay to public key hash, or a bit more recently, pay to script hash. But essentially, you don't actually post the public key, you post the hash of the public key. And then when you post the signature, you post it with the public key. Now, I think the reason it was chosen originally is just to conserve space, if I'm not mistaken. But it has a bit of quantum benefit because a quantum computer can efficiently turn a public key, a signature public key, if the signature is ECDCA at least, or the stuff that we use these days, it can very easily take the public key and compute it back to the secret key. And like the function that takes a secret key to a public key is considered a one-way function for classical computers. Classical computers don't know how to compute it backwards, but quantum computers can, using Shor's algorithm, or more accurately, a variation called the Bonnet-Lipton algorithm. But quantum computers don't know how to inverse a hash function. If I give you the hash, it depends on the hash, but it's true for most hashes, and specifically in Bitcoin, they use, I think, double SHA and a RIP-MED. It doesn't really matter. They use some hash, and a quantum computer can't really invert this hash much faster. It could do it a little bit faster, but not significantly faster. And so, because the hash of your public key is posted on the blockchain, not the public key itself, a quantum adversary can't use it to find out your secret key. But in more recent standards like Taproot, actually the secret key, the public key is again posted in the clear and it is not hashed. And it's also that way in Kaspa. And I believe the reason Gaurav asked the question is exactly because of this, the fact that because the keys are in the clear, then a quantum adversary could just read the key from the blockchain and invert it.
Yes, exactly. And Shai, you're the expert in this since you've successfully defended your dissertation in something similar. I'm guessing. I'm wondering whether you have. I know this is probably not an immediate risk, but I'm sure in the long arc of Kaspa, as I'm sure it's going to last for a long time. It seems like a very well thought out cryptocurrency/network. In the long arc of history, at some point, you're probably going to choose some sort of a PQC algorithm, if not for the hashing of the proof of work, at least for the signature part. Is that correct?
Okay, so I'll just explain the question for the listeners. PQC stands for post-quantum cryptography. And there are signature schemes that are considered believed to be post-quantum. Now, I'm going to keep saying the words believed to be or considered to be. I'm never going to say are. And this is just a universal truth of cryptography. All of the cryptography, classical, quantum, essentially all of it is based on hardness assumptions that can't be mathematically proven. You can't prove that a computer, you can't prove that a computer can't solve, can't factor to primes. You can just accumulate evidence that it's a hard problem. So there are classical hardness assumptions which are known to be quantumly not hard, like prime factorization or discrete logarithms. And there are other assumptions like learning with errors or shortest vector problems and all sorts of stuff that are believed to be hard also for quantum computers. And people have created signature schemes that are based on this hardness assumption. In order to break the scheme in some sense, like forging a signature or obtaining the secret key or whatever, if you're able to do it, then you're also able to do something which is believed to be hard. You can't do it easily. And there are a few signature schemes like this. The National Institution of Standards, and I never remember the acronym. They're called NIST.
Yeah.
They've created, they've had a competition with a few rounds. They've been working very hard to standardize post-quantum signature scheme and post-quantum encryption schemes. And they have a few schemes whose name you might have heard, like the Falcon scheme that has been adopted by Algorand, or crystals dilithium, or all sorts of other schemes. And the question was if there are plans to implement post-quantum signatures on Kaspa. So I'm not aware of any such plans at this point. I don't think it should be a priority right now because I think post-quantum signatures still have to mature. I think post-quantum cryptography, it's going through the best, most thorough cryptanalysis that cryptographers and cryptanalysts and hackers could give it, but it still can't quite compare to 35 years of being in production like ECDSA and RSA. And there are curveballs and surprises. I'm going to repeat the story that I told last week about the Falcon scheme. Falcon scheme is a NIST finalist. It's NIST standardized. It's considered safe, but and it was adopted and implemented into the Algorand chain. And after it was adopted, it turned out that it has a side channel attack. What does a side channel attack mean? It does not mean that the scheme is broken, that there is a mistake in the proof, that someone made a claim that turned out wrong. It means that you can attack it if you take into account stuff that wasn't part of the security analysis. And in this case, it turned out that you can, if you listen to a device that is making Falcon signatures, and I mean, when I mean listen, I mean you measure the electromagnetic radiation that it emits during the computation. And if this device doesn't happen to have this a bit expensive feature that is called fixed time floating point arithmetics, then you can recover the secret key just by listening to signatures being computed. Now, it's not a deal breaker. It doesn't mean that Falcon is broken, but it does mean that you have to have this hardware feature on any wallet that securely holds Falcon signatures. And crypto wallets typically don't have this feature because crypto wallets try to use as cheaper hardware as possible. So, and it didn't happen, but it might have as well have happened that hardware wallets for post-quantum Algorand would have shipped, and 1 or 2 years later, people would realize that, hey, these wallets don't have fixed point arithmetic, and essentially you can attack them. If you measure someone that uses this hardware to sign sufficiently many times, you can recover their secret key. So this is just a cautionary tale to saying that I think we need to wait a little more. I don't think it's urgent enough that you want to run ahead and implement the things you have today. Furthermore, I think that if you're getting stressed and you want to buy more time, then you have to remember always that at this point, at least at this point in time, the scale at which quantum computers increase is sublinear. The more you increase, the more the problems you run into, and the increase pace is quite slow. So even if you feel that quantum computers become more and more close to the required scale, you can reparameterize your ECDSA signatures to use I don't know, 10 times as many bits or even 4 times as many bits, and you buy yourself some more time without having to commit to any post-quantum signature.
That was very well explained, Shai. Thank you for doing that. Sorry, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I hear you just fine.
Oh, okay, great. I agree with you, and also the Falcon story is especially prescient. But I'm gonna make a guess and say you are a little bit of a fan of Satoshi's sort of MO and his design decisions, or are you not?
I think Satoshi, whoever he or she or they were extremely clever. But they
The
made
reason
some
why I asked,
choices.
yeah,
They made some
it's kind of like
choices
a
that in
funny.
him. I'm sorry, go on.
No, it was meant in levity. I meant it kind of like a joke because the Falcon attack, and please correct me if I'm wrong because obviously you're the expert, but it's more of deriving the private key from a signature, so it usually penalizes people that reuse their addresses, like you're kind of forced to do in Ethereum. I'm sure you're cognizant that Satoshi's recommendation is to not reuse addresses. So even if the Falcon side channel attack was used, it's only going to affect people that reuse addresses, correct? Or am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely correct.
Um, I was the reason why I was asking about the PQC algorithms is because I was just curious whether you had a favorite algorithm in mind or whether you had thought of something. I agree with you that it might be too early about thinking about which algorithms will work. Um, some class of algorithms kind of have probably a better probability of passing a test. Algorithms that use some well-known sort of pre-structures like hashes, like hash-based signatures are probably going to last because hashes are well studied. I didn't want to come here empty-handed, so I've actually, uh, and please forgive the format because I don't know how somebody does propose a improvement proposal like they have in Bitcoin, but I took the liberty in writing one off. It's completely draft, and please remember that I just looked at the code for a few days. But I'll post a link to my proposal to make Kaspa post quantum resilient, which uses a soft fork, so it'll be easy for um, clients to upgrade, and there's not much bloat because it's using Sphinx Plus, so it's only twice the actual size of the coin of the public address because it uses two addresses. Anyway, I'm sure you can read the proposal and evaluate it for yourself. I don't think I can post on the
But in Sphinx, I think the signatures themselves are large. You can always trade off the
signatures
size of the signature for the size of the
yeah,
key.
the signatures is very large. So I came up with a kind of, I don't know if it's clever or not. So basically, it's a soft fork of basically you have two addresses, your existing ECDSA address and your Sphinx address. And at some point, when the network decides that the ECDSA signatures are not valid anymore because quantum computers are now online, then only the Sphinx signatures would be accepted for expending those coins. So it really the public keys is still small. It only signatures are big, but that won't be an issue till the quantum computers come online. But I think this would be at least. I mean, look at it yourself. But it's a proposal to kind of seamlessly transition using a soft fork to something that could be sort of quantum proof in the future and activated whenever you need to. But I can't post a link. I'm not sure how to post the link.
You should be able to, if you tap the three dots, it should say share to space, or just let me know which one and I can do it for you. I think Landy, you've got your hand up. You want to chime in?
Yeah. I don't want to be exposed for being a little bit out of my depth here, but I am pretty involved on the Bitcoin side of things. One of the preferred proposals, at least that we've seen over there, is BIP360, which is the qubit scheme, which I don't think we've nailed down exactly whether it be using Falcon or Sphinx Plus or what would be happening on the back of that, but changing a soft fork essentially over to P2QRH addressing schemes, and having essentially the other methods that we've seen over on Bitcoin, would involve essentially some sort of period where funds would have to be moved from old addresses and reused addresses as well. And I know that, these things have been heavily talked about in the Bitcoin sphere for quite some time, and that they're being heavily debated in the Kaspa sphere and community as well. And my question is, is Kaspa going to look to kind of the Bitcoin side of things and see which directions things may go? Or is Kaspa going to, what's the conversation like? Because I'm not really heavily involved on the community side of things. Is the conversation gonna be a wait and see, and let's evaluate, see where Bitcoin kind of goes, or is this, hey, we're gonna go our own way. We're gonna pick what we believe is gonna work best for us, because we know we have some time, and we don't have as much let's call it robust conversation and maybe factions that Bitcoiners have, because we have quite some diverse set of ideas and usually some slings and arrows being thrown between the 2 or 3 different factions over here in Bitcoin land. So just want to kind of get a feel for kind of framing where we are in terms of, like, we take the lead from Bitcoin, do your own thing, kind of a symbiotic relationship, wait and see where are we at with this stuff.
Okay, so I can't give you a concrete answer. I think the most concrete thing I have to say is that nobody currently leads any efforts for quantum resilience. I mean, there are some fleeting conversations and thoughts about this, but I think whenever someone decides that this is their priority right now and they want to drive a change, a soft fork or whatever towards quantum resilience, and they're going to choose their own way, either by following Bitcoin or by diverging from Bitcoin. I personally, I follow slightly what's going on in Bitcoin. I follow the conversation. I dedicated like about 3 years of my life to this question. How can you securely transfer money from pre-quantum addresses to post-quantum addresses? I came up with a protocol which I think is fascinating, more like we came up, me and my advisor also thought, and it has fascinating properties. Essentially, even first, it protects you from front running, right? Because the problem is, say you think that because your address is hashed, then you're secure. But it's not quite the case, because you have to give your public key to the miners in order to spend. And while your public key is in the mempool, a quantum adversary could potentially listen to it and use it to front run you, use their quantum computer to compute your secret key and then create a competing transaction with a higher fee that steals all of your money. And so you can't just go ahead and say, well, my key is hashed, so I can spend it freely. And so the way to overcome this, in all of the protocols that I've seen, is to go through a commit and reveal process. You first commit to which transaction you want to do, and then you wait for, like, I don't know, 200 blocks, and only then you reveal. And the protocol is changed in a way that does not allow you to spend something without committing and then revealing. Bitcoin or whatever shifts the mode of operation to only allow spending pre-quantum addresses this way. And there are a lot of problems with this idea, but the main problem is, how do you pay the fee for committing? Because when you commit, you can't give any information that proves that you own the UTXO, because this information could be used against you by an adversary. It's essentially giving the public key. So how do you pay the fee? And the only solution I've seen before my work was to pay the fee from an external source, like if you already have a post-quantum UTXO. But what if there aren't any post-quantum UTXOs, okay? Or if they are few and far between, if spending them is extremely expensive. So we found a very nice way to do this, to essentially pay the fee from the transaction that you are going to reveal using a mixture of cryptography and social consensus. Essentially, the ways that you provide some special source of proof, it's called the picnic proof. And it's kind of large, but you don't have to post it to the blockchain in normal operations. You only need to post it in case of fraud, in case someone tries to spam, tries to post a commit without a reveal, then you're gonna post the proof that they've committed and not revealed, and then you're gonna get something from them. They have to put a deposit or something. And this protocol has some wondrous properties that we realized. First of all, the original protocol we talked about can only save hashed and non-reused addresses. You must have a hashed address. Not only that, if you use the same address several times for several UTXOs and then you spent one of them, then all of the rest of the UTXO are now completely compromised because you revealed the key to spend one UTXO, and now everybody knows the keys and knows that the key can check very easily that the key matches two hashes of UTXOs that weren't spent yet. So we realized that using this approach, we can extend the set of addresses of UTXOs that you can save quite a lot. I mean, to almost everything. The only limitation, there are two limitations, but one of them is whether you agree to a hard fork or it has to be a soft fork. But if you agree to a hard fork, you can save pretty much any UTXO that wasn't created before 2014. And why 2014? It sounds kind of arbitrary. It's very interesting, actually. This 2014 comes from the fact that in 2014, HD wallets were ubiquitous. So this is the key here. We found a way to use the fact that a transaction was derived from a story, that an address was derived from an HD wallet, a hierarchical deterministic wallet, you know, this thing with all the derivation paths and stuff that creates you a new key for every transaction. If something was derived from this kind of wallet, then you can use this fact to create such a proof, even if the public key is known in the clear. So this hugely extends the set of stuff that you can save, and it gets even more interesting because apparently you can even use this to save transactions whose keys was lost. You lost your public key, all you have is, you lost your secret key, all you have is the hash of your public key, and yet there is a way to allow you to still recover your money, which is kind of magical, and I'm going to explain exactly how it works because it's actually really simple. The idea is like this. You allow anyone to spend any UTXO. Sounds crazy, right? But if they want to spend a UTXO without providing any proof, any signature, any secret key or something, they have to put a very large deposit and let this thing wait for a year, okay? And during this year, anyone who does have the key can post a proof that they have the key and recover the money and also take your deposit. Now you're gonna ask, okay, but how can they post the proof if they don't have the key? You said lost keys, right? So here is the point. Because of this deposit, people are incentivized to lie about losing their key because they want to goad adversaries into putting their deposits to try to steal the money, so they would lose their deposit. So even if you hear that someone lost their key, you can't know if they actually lost their key or they're just fooling you to think they lost their key because they want you to try and steal their money and then punish you by taking the deposit back. So all of this thing wrapped together into this protocol we called lifted signatures, or sorry, lifted Foxcoin. It's called this way because it combines two things. It combines some other thing we invented, which called lifted signatures, with a protocol by Bonu and Miller from 2014 called Foxcoin, which is a commit wait reveal based protocol, which also has this quantum resilience, but also has this problem that you have no way to actually pay the fees, and either it makes the network unusable or it make it completely spammable. And I tried, I admit I tried very little, but I did try to make the Bitcoin community notice the protocol and at least consider it. But again, maybe if I pushed harder, like I didn't even send a mail to the developer mailing list, but I posted like a BCT post and I sent a few emails and I couldn't get anyone to actually look at this protocol. And so since then, I'm kind of like, I take Bitcoin's post-quantum efforts a bit less seriously because I think that they are not actually reviewing all of the options. I hope maybe if you are involved and following this conversation, maybe you will get someone to take a look. I mean, I would be offended if it's rejected for some reason, but I think it's an interesting idea, enough interesting to be considered.
I think that's a really interesting idea. I feel like I remember hearing something about that, about a protocol that was introduced to recover coins. I'm not sure, but if you have some links, I would love to look at it. I can help you make a bit from it. I had some questions. You said you found a way to figure out that certain addresses were constructed using the HD algorithm. Was it just by looking
No.
at that? Okay.
You can't.
Yeah,
There is no way to tell. I mean, sometimes there are ways to tell because some wallets leave some fingerprints, either purposely or not, but you can't count on that. Theoretically, there is no way to tell apart an HD wallet address from just any other address because a hash is a hash. It looks random. What I said was that in 2014, hardware wallets were so ubiquitous, I went to the Wayback Machine and checked. In 2014, each and every one recommended wallet on the Bitcoin.org website was an HD wallet. So what I am arguing, and it's a social argument, it's not a formal argument, that at this point, HD wallets were so ubiquitous that even if you had some address UTXO generated after 2014, that weren't generated by an HD wallet, they are so rare that even if someone claims that they have such an address or tries to fool you to think you have such an address, you can't really know if it's true or if they're trying to goad you to give them money. But there is no way to actually know.
right. That's what I thought, because that would be more of a concern, because then there would be a problem with the cryptography that was used. So I'm happy to hear that. It might be relevant, but I did a preliminary analysis of coins that are still in P to pay to public key. And it actually turns out to be not that many coins, 1.9 million coins. And interestingly, they're all block subsidy coins that haven't moved from their block. So I'm assuming it's probably Satoshi or somebody kind of like Satoshi. But yeah, I think 99.9% of the coins that are encumbered by the pay to public key, which are quantum, obviously, they're not quantum resilient. 99% of them are block subsidies. So they were actually rewards for generating a block, and they haven't moved since they were generated. So It's actually not that big of a percentage, but I'm sure you know, that there could be exchanges, and I'm sure there are exchanges that are not following the protocol of not reusing certain addresses that expose their public keys that probably are holding a lot of coins. I should run another script to see how many coins are vulnerable. But at least in Bitcoin's case, it doesn't seem to be that big of a problem. People, in Kaspa's case, obviously, I know it's a little more demanding because the transaction throughput is expected to be very, very high, which is one of the sort of value adds of Kaspa. And so the size of signatures might be an issue, which is why the BIP, it's not a BIP, I guess it's a KIP, right? Kaspa improvement proposal is taking into consideration the fact that the size is much more of a factor in Kaspa's case than in Bitcoin's case, which is why I chose the algorithms that I chose. But I'd love to get your input on it, after a few days when you get when you get a chance to look at it. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, first, I think that I wouldn't call 1,000,000 coins just marginal in Bitcoin's case. It's about, almost 10% of the supply, like 7-8% of the supply, which is quite a lot. I mean, think about how it's worth in USD. Like, I think if someone just swipes these addresses, it would completely undermine the Bitcoin economy. But this is not all of the problem. There is a huge problem of address reuse. And there is the fact that Taproot is gaining popularity, so you have more and more addresses that are given in the clear. Now, there are reports by Deloitte that you can read in the website that gives they did what you did. They scraped through, but they didn't just look for P2PK addresses. They also looked for used addresses. And they find that there are, if I remember correctly, maybe 2 or 3 million Bitcoins in reused addresses that could be, in theory, picked up by a quantum computer right now. So this is more of an issue. Regarding Kaspa, I actually think that Kaspa is very, very well positioned to implement post-quantum cryptography. Because Kaspa remains secure even if you have a lot of parallelism. And the only reason not to shoot the block rates through the roof is not the security, is the hardware requirements. And the hardware requirements, they grow quadratically with the width of the graph. Now, I think Michael Sutton came up with an algorithm which is called reachability, which I explained in a few situations, and which was very hard to come up with, and which is crucial for implementing BlockDAG, because without going into exactly what it does, the consequences are that the complexity grows quadratically and not quartically. So this is essentially the reason why everything is so fast and efficient, and we can do 10 BPS on $100 hardware. But if you enlarge blocks, then you don't make the DAG too much wider, because what makes blocks take a lot of time to propagate is if you have a lot of processing to do, and it depends on the scheme, but in many schemes, producing the signatures is the heavy part, and validating a post-quantum transaction is not significantly more computationally heavy than validating a pre-quantum transaction. So if we want to remain with the similar throughput, we could enlarge the blocks. So if we say we want to keep the same TPS, then we're going to, and the signatures are 50 times larger, then we're going to have blocks that are 50 times larger, but takes pretty much the same time to process. And it's going to make the DAG wider, but not by a lot. And obviously, this is also an absurd take, right? In practice, you would want to find a sweet spot between making, you want to sacrifice the throughput. You find the sweet spot of, on one hand, sacrificing throughput, and on the other, sacrificing performance. But Kaspa is very resilient to this kind of stuff, especially once Dagnite gonna roll out. I don't know if you are aware of Dagnite, but it's essentially a protocol that adjusts automatically to varying network conditions. So if you make the transmission, like the size of the block in bytes, larger and keep the same processing overhead, then you suddenly make your network more sensitive to changes in network conditions, because you have a lot more data to transmit, even though it's pretty much as hard to process. And Dagnite could really take this oversensitivity, because it introduces reactiveness that could be resilient to this overhead too. So I think it's Kaspa's ability to process a lot of throughput and delegating and turning like scalability from a security issue to a hardware issue, which is a bad way of saying it. The good way, or the true way of saying it, is that it actually allows you to utilize the hardware on the network to the fullest, regardless of the network conditions. I think this puts it in a fantastic position to implement post-quantum security in the future, compared to coins like Bitcoin, where you want to avoid increasing the orphan rates, and it limits your leeway from every conceivable direction.
I agree 100%. I actually found that really interesting. I think somebody else brought it up about the dynamic block size based on empirical data. It reminds me of the difficulty adjustment just in terms of scalability. This is actually why I'm trying. I had to Dockerize your latest binary, because I want to test out, do some sort of stress tests on different size of computers. So, computers with a certain memory or a certain CPU dedicated to it. I would love to add that to the test section, to the code, maybe send a pull request or something once I'm done with it. I had a question. I noticed that the rumor is that Satoshi chose the coin emission rate to match the gold rush, where the cost to mine gold doubled every 4 years, right? According to some people. What was the rationale in the emission rate for Kaspa, and why is it so aggressive in the first year?
So I'd say that people think that it is aggressive because they don't put the correct variable on the X scale. They use time as a variable. And then when you look at Bitcoin's chart, or Bitcoin's emission chart, I'm not talking about price, God forbid. If you look at the emission chart, or the graph of remaining supply over time or whatever, you see that it goes to zero much, much more slowly than Kaspa. But if you renormalize the graph, and instead of using time, using adoption, then the idea was to try to make them the same, and actually make Kaspa's graph a bit slower. What do I mean by adoption? Like, it's an abstract thing. You can't really quantify it. But the idea was something like this. Like Bitcoin, we are going to be I don't need to use the word quantum, right? There's nothing quantum about this. Like Bitcoin, we are going to be ASIC friendly. Bitcoin didn't plan to be ASIC friendly. Nobody thought that ASICs would be a thing in 2008, 2009, of course, but here there was a conscious decision to be ASIC friendly for many reasons. In the short run, it seems ludicrous because people think this means that you are handing away your coin to the corporations. But in the long run, it's the only sustainable form of security. I explained it a lot. It's because designated hardware always wins. And if your coin is valuable enough, if crypto gets picked up by the global industry and adopted, and your coin is worth $2 bajillion, then people will find a way to build the hardware. And once they do, and the more ASIC resistant you are, the more costly it would be to produce, buy, and use this hardware. So eventually you find yourself more centralized than the ASIC friendly coins, because their hardware, because you don't have this resistance, then it's cheaper to make and it's cheaper to run. But this is a solution in the long run. What happens in the short run? So what happened to Bitcoin in the short run? By the time ASICs emerged into the market, most of the coin has been emitted. This was the quote-unquote solution because it was a retroactive solution, but this is the reason that in spite of a prosperous mining industry, which is very centralized, you still have a good spread of the coin, because by the time ASICs hit, then most of the coin was already out. And this is what Jonathan tried to do with Kaspa. So if I remember correctly, in early conversation, he said he wanted 80% of the coin to be emitted by the time ASICs get emerge for retail. In practice, it happened around the 65% mark, which is exactly the same as Bitcoin. So my answer to your question is that I don't think that Kaspa's emission schedule is aggressive at all. I think it follows Bitcoin's emission schedule very, very closely when properly normalized. And it is other coins that have emission schedules that run into the 22nd century that are being way too slow, because it's easier to leave the problem of adoption and subsidy and fees to our grandchildren's grandchildren instead of trying to solve it in our lifetimes.
Thank you.
Landy, you got your hand up. You want to chime into this part of the discussion?
Yeah, I mean, one of the beauties of Bitcoin was that it would purposefully become much harder to mine over time, and that of course, the emissions go down, the rewards go down, which is the whole point, is to encourage decentralization. And although we have a lot of centralization in terms of mining pools and operations right now, that can't sustain forever, right? They're already looking at ways to, um, a lot of those companies that operate those larger mining pools are looking at ways to productize and decentralize their pools, right? Because over time, it's just not a sustainable fee model, especially when we're looking out to 2140 or whatever. Right. So might be a while before any of that happens, but we're starting to see movement and kind of underground movement with like the solo Satoshi and the little BitAxe miners, and that's only going to become smaller and faster. There's some players that are investing into research on how to, um, continue to make miners and ASICs that are more efficient, smaller, and then productize, so they actually do something while they're mining. Um, and then, of course, that's where I think we're going to run into, hey, there's these products out there that are consumer grade products that do something, but also mine Bitcoin and support the network. They're maybe locked to a pool. through firmware or something like that. And then you'll have the decentralized kind of Solo Satoshi, BitAx, NerdAx, and all this other stuff that'll be on the side as well. But the vision was to make it as difficult as possible as time goes on, to encourage the decentralization and adoption of the network, right? And I think that is kind of the path that things are headed. What that means for the future of the network, and of course, in the context of this conversation with Kaspa is new, right? And still in the process of being adopted on the mining side of things and network support side of things, and is actually showed really encouraging things on the decentralization side of things as well, because of the ability to still be able to mine even off of your GPUs, right? The proposal for optical, that stuff will encourage.
Kaspa is not GPU mineable currently.
Well, I mean, the K5s haven't completely taken over. You could still mine at home utilizing, I mean, they're still in there, isn't it? For the GPU mining side of things?
No, GPU, because the algorithm is so ASIC friendly, then even the first ASICs blew the GPUs completely uncompetitive. There are a lot of home miners. A lot of them, they use small my home mining machines, which are ASICs, but small ASICs, KS0s, KS0 Pros. They cost like
Yeah.
$400, $500, and they are quiet and they are cold. They don't generate a lot of heat. This is all a consequence of ASIC friendliness. The ability to make this is exactly what I was talking about. It's not hypothetics. We see it right now.
Okay.
Because we use a very ASIC friendly algorithm. You can make cheap to buy, cheap to operate mining machines that aren't noisy and don't generate a lot of heat, because there isn't a lot of resistance. Everything is very, very efficient. And because of that, small home miners, KS0s, KS0s Pros are still top sellers, even though they are not as efficient as KS5s and KS5Ls. But all of the home miners use ASICs. Nobody GPU mines anymore.
Okay.
Yeah,
So I'm a
I've
little
got.
outdated in that regard.
Yeah, I've got a KS Zero Ultra running at my house, and it's like the cost of a light bulb to keep on, and I'm still hitting blocks madly enough. Like, it's really sporadic. Don't get me wrong, but in the last, I don't know, 3 months, I've hit 2 blocks at least. Like, it's like I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I'm not making money out of it. I do it because I enjoy it, but it is a really cheap way just to secure the network as well. And like, for me personally, the coins that I mine, I just keep them separate. I'm not going to trade them in or anything like that. So actually, over time, with speculation, they could actually pay for themselves. But again, that is just speculation. But yeah, I mean, they're great. I'd highly. I think there's a lot of people that are home miners, and especially with 10 blocks per second literally around the corner, there's going to be a lot of people that will solo mine as well to their own node, which is what I think should be encouraged as well. I think it's a really good thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, the movement is really starting to pick up steam on the Bitcoin side of things, which is kind of funny because, it's kind of post-halving that it's now picking up more than it ever has before. Only because we've seen some of these smaller solo miners like BitAxes. I think they're up to like 4 or 5 blocks that they've hit now on Bitcoin. I'm curious, has anyone on the Kaspa side of things looked at, I mean, those things are like maybe $100 to $200. Has anybody looked at some of those projects, and it'd be something really easy to productize to get costs down if you're just strapping ASICs to SPCs and getting them out there, or cross compatibility with some of these ASICs that are already out there that are Bitcoin focused. I mean, it's not a difficult transition to reutilize some of the product that's already out there. That's very, very cheap. I'm sure that you could even get some of these lower power, considered mid-range solo miners or lottery miners that you could convert over to Kaspa. That could be fairly simple. I would encourage the community to do that or look into that and look at what the Bitcoin scene is evolving to. And the reason why I say this is because there are some secretive US-based miners that are into Kaspa now, or getting into Kaspa. We already know of a few here, but the lead that is kind of being followed right now is they're all paying attention to what's happening in the solo mining space, which is one of the reasons why I brought up the productization side of things that they're starting to explore. Obviously, this is very early stages in terms of product market fit, how they could pitch it, what could be locked down versus not. Do they want to open source it so that you could join any pool if it's a branded product, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of discussion happening, but they're looking at like the BitAxe project, the Solo Satoshi stuff, the Apollo stuff, right? Which is granted a much more expensive home mining setup, but there's a lot of things that are starting to evolve on this side because we know what the future, holds for Bitcoin, and you could jump that, right? You could jump that before the institutions start to get in and already have a robust, productized home mining market for Kaspa. I look at it more from a business side of things in this regard because I like Kaspa. I like where things are headed. I like what's being proposed. I know that at some point this was like a debate stage, but then it changed to quantum. So I was like, I'm not going to be one to debate because I'm a fan of Kaspa. So it's kind of, it's an interesting time to live in right now because of where we are in terms of adoption for Bitcoin. Potentially the United States becoming being encouraged to become the leader in hash rate over time via the administration's policy, rather. Sorry. And I could see that benefit rolling down to something like Kaspa, not just here in the United States, but worldwide, right? Because encouraging mining and operation kind of centralization in the United States means that there's going to be a lot of money poured into the crypto sector, being Bitcoin and everything else, that benefits not just here in the US, but benefits all around the world because it's decentralized, right? So curious if there's any thoughts on that, or where we think things might be headed post update, because I know we got to go one step at a time, right?
In terms of the BitAxe stuff, I definitely think that actually I think it's Luke who might be looking at it. He runs a website called Kaspa Nodes, I think it is, or Cas Nodes. And I think he's looking into doing something similar to that, which I think would be awesome because, like you said, BitAxe has had a lot of sales fairly recently, and it probably is because, like you said, they're lucky miners, and if they've hit 5 blocks already, it certainly incentivizes people to do it. But I think it's a good incentive, definitely. And like, again, cheap hardware is fantastic to have, and I think that's the beauty of Kaspa, is it really allows for cheap hardware. Shai would definitely have more info on this though.
I will not. So I wanted to say that this is actually really out of my depth. I was never interested in mining myself. I was never a miner. I was interested in mining for exactly 3 weeks after Kaspa launched. I mined, or someone had to run a mining operation, and it fell on me. So yeah, I mined. I only did one mining operation, but it was a pretty good mining operation, and mined 840 million Kaspa. But other than that, I'm not into home mining. I'm not into ASIC mining. So I've heard people talk about open source ASICs and about repurposing and all of this jargon that I don't really understand. You dropped quite a few names that I don't know anything about, but they rang some bell. I think I've seen Luke Danshay talking about it. I think might have seen Christian Ludwig talking about it. I know that there are people who care about this stuff, and more generally, I know that where there is value, there will people will extract it, and especially when it comes to mining, because miners and I say it compassionately. They know how to be greedy AF, you know. But I personally can't tell you any more than that. This is not my forte, personally. I do want to say two things, though, really quickly. First of all, Gaurav, I left a link to my paper about lifted Foxcoin in the comments here. And Landy, I also left a link to a series of posts that I wrote about the fee market. I don't want to get into it, it's not the topic here, but a lot of what you know about security subsidy and about the fee markets, a lot of the quote unquote universal truths that people have grown very accustomed to, they don't apply to Kaspa anymore because Kaspa is the first, the only, as far as I know, cryptocurrency that has a multi-leader consensus. That every round there are multiple equivalent leaders that whose blocks are aggregated into one state and they can't game each other. Unlike all of the contemporary cryptocurrencies where you know, people compete to be the leader of the next round, but after the competition is over, you only have one round. I actually, just today, I put out a video on it. You can see it on my Twitter page. Or should I say, on my X profile. So you can, there are a lot of things that behave very differently on the Kaspa fee market due to this property, and I think it merits a reevaluation of the way we think about the security subsidy problem.
I agree with you. I actually find that very interesting. Maybe not for the general public, but I used to say that Satoshi didn't solve the Byzantine generals' problem, but he actually solved a bigger problem, which was the Byzantine plebeians' problem. And it seems like, based on what you just said, you did a better job at it. So yeah, that's very interesting what you said. Thank you.
Amazing. I'm really enjoying this. I know it's don't get me wrong, it's hard to follow, especially because the words you're using are very big words. But I am actually really enjoying this. So massive thank you to all of you. To go back to the sort of quantum state at the moment. So I've just seen that Google Willow, the chip, has solved a problem in 5 minutes that normally would take a supercomputer 10 septillion years to solve. I know you've said this before, Shai, but is that actually anything that is a major concern at the moment? Because when you hear things like that, it does make you think, Jesus, are we ready for sort of quantum resilience? Because that sounds extremely scary.
Yeah, so the second you answer these questions, I hurried to push the mute button so I could sigh loudly. I'm sick of hearing about Google's septillion, quintillion stuff. You know, last time they made such a statement, it was a few years ago with the, I don't remember, the Sycamore chip, I think it was called. And they say that they made a computation that they've made it in this and that minutes that is going to take a supercomputer then they were modest. They only said it's going to take like a couple of hundred of thousands of years, if I think correctly. Take every number here, I say here with a grain of salt. Everything I say might be wrong up to 2 orders of magnitude, but not more. But if I remember correctly, what I do remember, what I can tell you for certain, that it only like a short while after that, people came up with ways to do this same computation much faster. I remember that someone managed to do it on a laptop over a weekend, but maybe it wasn't that much. But it seems that Google really overshot their estimations. Now, there is a depth problem here. How do you even test whether something is quantum? It is a quantum circuit, it's a quantum computer. And people play around a lot with what this actually means. I'm not going to name names, but people have seen me going into a very public, very heated discussion with a small project that pretends to be quantum, to implement quantum computing while they don't do anything of the sort, and they use all of these semantics to like excuse the way they are misleading people. And Google aren't as egregious, aren't as blunt, and I think aren't as malicious, but they do seem to have something that doesn't quite add up, and it's not just my opinion. During my PhD, I would hear about Google's new Google News by hearing how people around me talk about how they're misrepresenting what they've done. Now, how do you even benchmark how quantum something is a very hard problem. It's a holy grail problem. And when Google say that it's gonna take a classical computer this and that time, what they mean is if you do it in the brute force way or in the best known way at this time, it should take as long. But it doesn't mean there are more efficient and more clever ways to do it. And usually there are. Now, it doesn't mean that Google are being deceitful, don't get me wrong. It just means that it's not that easy to come up with a real benchmark for quantumness. Not at all for small machines. If you had if you told me that you have a 3000 logical qubit computer in your garage, I'd say, okay, here is an ECDCA public key, give me back the secret key. The problem is that we have small-scale noisy computers. We are going into what's John Preskill called it the RISC era, the NISC era, noisy intermediate scale quantum computers. And benchmarking whether such a computer is quantum or not is in itself sort of an open problem. What kind of assumptions can you make? What kind of hardness assumptions can you make? And so far, Google has not been very impressive, and there hasn't been much of I would say, I don't know, I'm missing a word here, but what I'm saying is it doesn't seem like the claims Google made quite match the actual data that they put out. And where I'm sorry, I lost my track of mine. It's quite late here. Okay, what I'm trying to say here is that there were methodological errors. There were all sorts of suspicious things. I'm talking about the last time around. And eventually there were papers that showed how this computation can be done more efficiently than Google claimed on classical computers. And Google invited experts to advise and to them and to talk about the methodological problems and how they can make stuff more robust and have more robust testing methodology next time. One of these people was a very known quantum skeptic and also a friend of mine called Dr. Gil Kalai. Professor Gil Kalai is completely entitled to this title. I don't agree with a lot of his criticisms about quantum computers in general. He claims they are not going to happen and there is theory barring them for even being a possibility. I don't quite agree, but he did make a lot of very good points about Google's experimental methodology. And then once they came out with Willow, he said that not only did they not follow the advice they were given from experts, but they actually made things worse methodology-wise, and the results are even less reliable. And now, as far as I understand, following the Willow launch, which was so much celebrated, a few weeks later, and I don't know actually the turn of events, but the head of research in this department, Martinez, either quit or was let go. If I follow correctly, though I didn't corroborate, is not with Google anymore. Now he's a very, very, very accomplished and very respected researcher. I don't want it to sound even slightly like I'm trying to disrespect him. I'm not in a position. He's so much more of a respected and accomplished researcher than I that I'm in no position to criticize him. But I'm just saying that in terms of optics, it seems that that the Willow announcement was kind of a flop, and I wouldn't be too concerned about it. At the end of the day, their claim is to have a chip with 150 noisy qubits. Now, it really depends on the noise thresholds, and I don't know what they are, but um, even for rather modest noise thresholds, you would need about a few dozens to hundreds of millions of qubits that are coherent with each other, sufficiently to do fault tolerance. I'm not gonna go exactly into what that means, in order to break 128 bits ECDSA. Um, and and we are talking about 150. So they're still, even if all their claims are completely correct, they are still like 6 orders of magnitude short from actually being any sort of threat.
Amazing. So basically we do sort of have still a lot of time at the moment before anything could come online that could quantum attack either Bitcoin or Kaspa. But is this something that could grow exponentially though? So as tech gets better and better, it starts really sort of shortening the gap between when an attack could possibly happen, or do you think this is still a fairly long way out?
So essentially, when you say that stuff goes exponentially, you're talking about Moore's law. Right, Moore's law. Moore said, I think it was in the 40s, quite a long while ago, that I don't remember something like the number of gates you're gonna be able to put in the same size microchip, which is like how people measured computational abilities in the abilities in the 40s. This is why he used this measure. So essentially, you can reinterpret it modernly as the computational ability of a chip is going to double once every 1.5 years, if I remember correctly. Moore's law held firm for about 60 years, and then it didn't. And the reason that it didn't is because at some point you reach a limit and you see that it isn't like the reason we managed to squish more and more and more, and eventually in the bottom line, like at the bottom of it all, it still works the way Moore describes it. Like computers become more efficient because you could shove more and more microchips on the same surface, and you could have them do more computations per second. And at some point, you get so fast and so tiny that it's not just about doing whatever you did so far, but doing it better. It's about facing new challenges that arise from the fact that new phenomena of physics that up to now are negligible, quantum phenomenons, suddenly become relevant. And
You mean
you need.
Heisenberg doesn't like him to to keep following Moore's law, right?
Hmm?
Heisenberg's uncertainty principle kind of gets in the way. And that's a limit. After that, after a certain size of the limit reached, quantum physics principle doesn't allow Moore's law to keep continuing. Is that what you meant?
No, it's not about uncertainty. Uncertainty is not the problem here. I don't know the details. You really need to ask an electrical engineer, a good electrical engineer, if you want really, a real understanding of this. I know this is just the way semiconductors are designed. They use this phenomenon called quantum tunneling, and it's fairly robust. Quantum tunneling is essentially it's this weird thing that, if you put a ping pong ball in a bowl that is like 1 meter deep, and you let it go at a height of 90 centimeters, and assume it doesn't have elasticity, right? Because it's just an illustration. It's not gonna go over the ball, the rim of the ball, because due to conservation of energy, it could never bounce higher than where you left it, right? But if it's a quantum ping pong ball, then it has some probability of jumping over the rim and having more energy, because it's a possibility. And if you have 10 trillion quantum balls, then like a fraction of a percent of them is going to make this. And quantum tunneling is pretty much the same, that you think that electrons don't have enough energy to go through an energy barrier, but some of them have this small probability. And if you put a lot of electrons, then suddenly you see them that a decent portion of them manages to go through. And this is essentially the trick we use to create two modes, like a mode of being non-conductive and being conductive. You can create, this is like essentially what we do with quartz. Like it has this separation, these two separated levels of energy that if you don't overload it enough, that it's an insulator, and once you put enough current through it, it becomes a conductor. And these are like the two states that we call 0 and 1. And the entire theory that holds this together, when you become too small or work at too small time frames, then it breaks down in some way that I don't completely understand. And this is what I meant. I don't think it has anything to do with uncertainty. I think it has more to do with with interference and decoherence. Now, in quantum computers, you keep running into this problem from the get-go. What I think that the way it is most apparent, it's in what called fault tolerance. So think like you are in the 1940s. You want to build computers, right? What is the problem with your computing machines? That some of the components that you use could be faulty, right? They could be not completely accurate. And you can't just say, okay, this is an approximate computers. It some of the time gives you the correct answer, right? This is not reasonable. So people came up with these protocols to do fault tolerance, error correction. Essentially, you can take you take some data and encode it into more data with redundancies, such that if some of the data gets corrupted, then you can recover the data. But then, because you need to process more data, you need more components, and then you have more errors, and then you go into this Ouroboros of, okay, I need to fix problems, so I use more fault tolerance, so I need more components, so I have no more problems to fix. And is this loop ever going to end? And in the 1950s, I think John von Neumann proved that in fact you can do fault tolerance computation. You can eventually catch this snake by the tail. And if you do things correctly, then you can correct all the errors, including the errors that are created by the components that are used to correct the errors, which is very nice. But it was never used. Why was it never used? Because it turned out that silicon-based computation is so reliable and errors are so rare that you don't need fault tolerance. You can just assume there aren't any errors and everything is fine. And now that we get to these huge scales of computation, it doesn't hold anymore. It's also a problem, if you have like huge data centers that are all doing this huge distributed computation, then suddenly errors become relevant again. But also when you're trying to maximize a chip beyond a certain threshold. Now, in quantum computation, this is not the case at all. There is an equivalent threshold theorem that shows that you can do fault-tolerant quantum computation. It was actually proved by one of my PhD advisors, Professor Rita Aronov, along with her it was her PhD's dissertation, which is really making me angry because it's such an important result and it's on her PhD. But okay, she proved it with her then advisor Mickey Benor. And in quantum computation, we don't know of any hardware that is so reliable that we can just let go of fault tolerance. And once you have to do fault tolerance, then you constantly have this phenomenon that as you increase with scale, you increase with complexity. And the main reason for this is the entanglement. In a CPU, it treats each bit independently, and you can do stuff that depends on other bits. You can check them for a second and then forget that they exist. But if you want to do true quantum computation, you have to have all of your qubits somehow maintain a shared state, and it tends to decohere, and you can't avoid this. So you always need this fault tolerance, and the more computationally exerting you want to be, you need more fault tolerance, which requires more engineering ingenuity, and it's a constant uphill struggle. So no, I don't think you can expect anything like Moore's law to ever exist for quantum computers.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. Thanks for the answer on that. So I'm really sorry. I'm trying to get my head round it because obviously this isn't my field at all. But with quantum computing, then, so it seems like we're quite a far way off then from anything that could be a real problem for crypto so far. So does that make it harder to sort of fight against because it's always adapting? So you're always sort of 1 or 2 steps behind, because as things get better from a quantum computer aspect of things, you then have to think of new ways or new post-quantum signatures or things like this that may become apparent as things get better. So it sort of like unlocks new challenges as things get better.
I don't think so. Post-quantum cryptography acts under the premise that there already are perfect arbitrary scale quantum computers. Cryptographers, what we do essentially is to fight imaginary adversaries, which are as powerful as we can make them. And a post-quantum cryptographer doesn't care about the current state of quantum computation. They care about a hypothetical reality where everyone has a quantum computer in their garage and what you're going to do in this reality. And the hardness assumptions that they rely on are assumed to be true for all quantum computers, not just for current scale quantum computers. We know that they are hard for current scale quantum computers because they are hard for classical computers, and currently nobody has has been able to actually do a computation with a quantum computer that a classical computer can't do. So no, I don't think that's an issue at all. It's you don't have to come up with new types of classical cryptography just because classical computers are becoming stronger. They still follow the same computational model. They just do it faster.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And then there's the other thing as well that I hear quite a lot about quantum attacks is that really the first things to get hit wouldn't be cryptos like Bitcoin or Kaspa, or potentially wouldn't be cryptos like Bitcoin or Kaspa, like because it's I'm assuming it's such an enormous amount of energy that's needed and energy costs money, obviously. The cost of an attack on something like Bitcoin or Casper would be so extreme that it would actually be more beneficial or cheaper in some respects to actually hit traditional finance, because let's face it, that's where all the money is as well. So is that something like? Well, I suppose what I'm trying to get at is are traditional finance sectors also looking at how to make things quantum resilient?
Well, I don't see any reason why it would be expensive to attack Bitcoin or Kaspa. I mean, an ECDCA key is an ECDCA key. It's as easy to attack it if you attack a UTXO on Bitcoin or if you attack intercepted communication of someone with their bank. I mean, it's the same task. It doesn't have anything to do with mining. It doesn't have anything to do with hash rate. Nothing at all. The TradFi sector is definitely working on quantum proofing itself. I talked quite a while about the NIST standardization of post-quantum cryptography, and they aren't doing this for the cryptocurrency industry. They don't care about the cryptocurrency industry. Those weren't the motivations. This is not the reason that the NFA is pouring billions into the NSA. Is pouring billions into it, and other security agencies. It's there for TradFi, and justifiably so. I mean, because if a hacker destroys the entire crypto industry overnight, then a lot of lives would be ruined. But if a hacker wipes TradFi overnight, then a lot more lives would be ruined. I mean, let's be real here. Everyone's life would be ruined. So the motivations, like I think, for people who come from the post-quantum cryptography side, most of them, I would say, that cryptocurrencies are very low on the list of motivations to pour so many resources into quantum proof or post-quantum cryptography. TradFi also have another advantage in being centralized. It's much easier to upgrade centralized systems. Now the bank can say from now on, when you log into your personal account from your website, your browser is going to use Sphinx instead of using ECDSA. No problem. In Bitcoin or Kaspa, you can't say from now on, all your UTXAs are not ECDSA anymore. From now, they're Falcon. No, you need all the users to migrate their money on their own expense, and you're gonna make a rush too, right? You're gonna essentially, if you now, part of the computation is how long it's gonna take to migrate all of that. But the point is that TradFi might be a more lucrative target, but it's also much easier. Not that I'm saying it's easy. It's very, very hard. The human factor is very strong in it. There is a list of examples. For example, there used to be this Wi-Fi standard called WEP, and it was hacked pretty much immediately after it was released. And then they released WPA to replace WEP. I don't know what the acronyms are, but I imagine in both of them, W stands for wireless. Um, and WPA has stood solid since. But it took more than a decade for most people to switch from web to WPA, and it's so stupid because it's a very simple switch, but people tend to procrastinate. So that's where the real problem is. And I imagine that if someone would have a quantum computer, a malicious quantum computer, they would seek their target very carefully, because once it comes out that quantum computers are out there, then um, then people are going to, like, you only get one or a few shots at that, because once it's clear that they're there, people would be much more prompted to upgrade. And in this sense, I think cryptocurrencies might be quite of a bad target, because not only do you reveal the fact that you have a quantum computer, quite obviously, or at least make a lot of people suspicious. Now, say, you have the Satoshi stash, say that it gets spent tomorrow. A lot of people will think that it's because someone has a quantum computer, Many people would assume this is the thing, and even if not all people are convinced, it would prompt a large update. It would prompt a lot of people to take precautions, but more than that, it would completely undermine the economy that they stole. If someone steals 2 million bitcoins, now all of the sudden 8% of bitcoins is at the hand of someone that nobody knows who they are, but there are good chances that they are malicious, then the coin is going to collapse immediately, and any attempt to sell this particular Bitcoin would be very quickly detected. And I imagine like exchanges wouldn't agree to accept any coin that could be traced back to these addresses, because they know it's just a matter of time before the authorities start to investigate what's going on, and they wouldn't want to have anything to do with it. There's so much problems here. And that being said, people did have the idea to place quantum canaries, like all sorts of challenges with bounties on them. Like there is the idea of cryptographic canaries. I believe Justin Drake was the first to use this term. And the idea is essentially to place to lock values in UTXOs, and that the only way you could spend is by um, uh, showing a vulnerability in a cryptographic scheme. I think also, who was it? So one of the original cypherpunks, I forgot their name, um, actually created UTXOs that you can only spend by showing a collision in a hash function. It did it for several hash functions. And so if someone manages to find a collision in SHA-256, there is a good chance that they will go and claim this reward, and then the entire world would know immediately. And so also quantum canaries were proposed before our work, where I'm taking us back to the protocol Orsatat and myself devised. But we did go more into this quantum canary thing, and we proposed to place a bounty in the form of a UTXO that is ECDCA secure, but use a variant of ECDSA that has less bits of security. So It requires, like, you need a quantum computer to break it. A classical computer could not break it, but it only needs to be like 10 times smaller than the computer you need to attack Bitcoin. And then people would be incentivized to take the canary money, especially if you set the protocol such that once the canary is killed, then you go into post-quantum mode and you can't steal anything again. And then people are incentivized to take the canary instead of waiting for the computer to be large enough to steal actual money, because if they decide to wait, then someone else could claim the canary in this time, and then they would be left with nothing. So, and there is an interesting game theory to that as well. You can see in the paper some I think it's approachable for anyone. This part is not hard to read because it's like an intuitive level game theoretic analysis of the situation. It's not very formal. But I think quantum blockchains could serve as very nice beacons for emergence of quantum computers.
Shai, that was lovely information. I have two questions for you, and I'm sure you're kind of sick of talking about the quantum part. But Satoshi generated a RSA-based PGP key that's only 1,024 bits of security. Do you think that would be something that serves as a canary? Because if somebody does have a quantum computer and gets to basically act like Satoshi, that would be a sign that there's a quantum computer, and an RSA key of 1,024 bits is fairly insecure compared to ECDSA of 256 bits, right?
It's an interesting point. You know that RSA, 1024 bits RSA is considered less secure than 256 bits ECDSA, right? It's considered to have less bits of security. So you would think that for a quantum computer, it should also be easier, but it isn't. Because for a quantum computer, both of them are easy. The problem is not how many computational steps you need to make, is how much RAM you need. Because the real problem here is how many qubits you can handle at the same time. And for 1024 bits RSA, you need larger inputs than for 256 bits ECDSA. So while classically the RSA, 1024 bits RSA, is considered much less secure than ECDSA, you actually need a smaller quantum computer to break the ECDSA than to break the RSA, plainly because the string itself is longer, so you need more qubits.
Thank you for that information. Yeah, I didn't know that. I guess let's moving on to another point. What would you think Kaspa needs going forward? What was the where is the fire? What's the most immediate need of Kaspa to improve, in your opinion?
I think the most important thing at this point might be DeFi and smart contracts. My personal opinion, I think if we want adoption, I think Kaspa could provide a very unique platform for smart contracts. It could be not only the most reactive, and most the fastest sequencer in the world, it also provides unique solutions to MEV and to decentralized oracles that are impossible to implement on any other cryptocurrency. Again, I talked about it in the video I posted today, actually. So I'm delighted that it comes up in this context too, because I can self-promote myself organically. But essentially,
Sorry, I was going to ask, isn't it true that Kaspa doesn't have script? It doesn't employ a scripting language. It's like very simple in terms of, or is there a scripting language? I'm still getting used to the technology. So, like how Bitcoin has its fourth kind of like scripting language to process transactions. Does Kaspa have a language?
I think Kaspa, I'm not sure about it. Again, Kaspa has many aspects. I'm far from being an expert in all of them. I think that Kaspa has the same or pretty much the same opcodes as Bitcoin. But I know that in Crescendo, they are going to implement some opcodes. Okay, so I don't want to get into this, into the reasons why right now, but we wanted to make it possible for you to create a UTXO that anyone can spend, but only to a transaction that pays more back to the same address. It's a solution for microtransactions. And in order to do this, it's like a very simple type of covenant, right? So in order to do this, keep was it 14? I don't remember. I think it's 14. A keep by Ori Newman and Maxim Biryakov. It adds some opcodes that allow this and are structured in a way that could be generalized in the future to allow covenants if the community so desires. I know Ori would love to work on it if there is any demand for it. And yeah, so there aren't any plans for on-chain smart contracts as far as I know. Smart contracts are being worked on as based rollups or enshrined rollups or these sorts of model where you use the base layer as a sequencer and you do arbitrary computations that are sequenced on the base layer. So it's not like this parasitic network that is completely independent and it only uses the base layer for settlements. The entire sequencing happens on the base layer, and then you could use this unique MEV resistance and oracles whose security you get from the base layer. If you want more information about this, I recommend seeing the various interviews with the guys from Igra Labs, and they're doing a fantastic job. Some of them are ex-Dag Labs employees. Dag Labs was the company that originally developed Kaspa before it was launched. So I think this is very important because Kaspa can really offer very unique, unprecedented benefits in the world of smart contracts. Like 2 years ago, I said that I don't think smart contracts should be such a priority, but that was before I realized how much ingenuity could be brought into the world of smart contracts by this multi-leader consensus, and that it could actually solve problems that have no good solutions right now using this multi-leader approach. So this is why I think it's important. It could make smart contracts that people in the industry actually want to use. So I think it could be, it's the way I see it, it's currently the most promising engine of adoption and of ingenuity, and I'm really all for it. And as you see, people already picked up the glove and are doing amazing things toward this end. Some of the updates in Crescendo will make it much more reasonable to do optimistic rollups, and ZK opcodes are already under heavy advanced discussion. And I think this is the good direction to go. There are some other things that I think are important, though not quite as important. But if we cut to the chase, then I would list quite a few things before I would say, oh, and also quantum resistance.
Fantastic. I was going to say about because I did want to touch on sort of internet chaos resistance as well, because I found that really, really interesting. I think it was Jonathan who spoke about it originally. But with the implementation, I think it needs Dagnite to be implemented. But with that implementation, it might actually cause Kaspa to be the most internet chaos resistant project out there. Is that correct? Or at least proof of work out there?
It is definitely correct. And it is definitely correct that you need Dagnite. So let me say it this way. When you operate a network, you need some assurances on the network latency. Your network has to be parameterized around the network latency. For example, Bitcoin, it has 10-minute block delays because it's longer enough than the network latency to make orphans very, very rare. If the network latency was 2 minutes, then Bitcoin all chains would have needed much larger block delays, right? So network latency matters to the parameters of your system and the way you choose them. And now the problem is that all of the cryptocurrencies, including all of the protocols, including GhostDAG, and the only exception here, actually, before Dagnite is Spectre, another protocol by Yoni Sompolinsky and Aviv Zohar. I think maybe also Yoad Levenberg, but I'm not sure. All of the other protocols, and I'm not just talking about proof of work, they have this assumption on a network latency bound. And you have to choose the network latency bound so that it holds most of the time. So there are two problems with this. Just a second. Yes, sorry. So just a second, sorry. Yeah, so on one hand, you have to take this security margin, right? If on average the latency is 2 seconds, that you're gonna have to make it like 10 seconds because you know the latency is going to be above average often. So this is already an issue, but the problem is that what happens if there is some sort of calamity whose consequences are that at least for a while, the latency, at least, I don't know, like between continents, is more than your assumed bound. And it would essentially deteriorate the security of your network. If right now it takes 5 minutes to communicate between Europe and America, then Bitcoin is going to suffer a lot of orphans and is going to be attacked quite a lot, or at least under a lot of risks. Dagnite is the only, and Spectre are the only protocols I know that don't make an assumptions on the network bound. They call it parameterless or parameterlessness, which is the property of not having a parameterized latency bound. I hate this name because there are parameters, right? There are many parameters. It's just this one parameter that you don't have. I like the term self-scaling. Spectre, it is self-scaling, but it only provides this type of liveness, which is called weak liveness. Doesn't matter what this means, but the consequences are that Spectre cannot be used for smart contracts. It could only be used for transaction layers. Once you have a lot of dependencies between, or more complicated dependencies within transactions, things break down. DAGNITE is the only protocol that is both self-scaling and provides strong liveness. So it could be used to do anything any other cryptocurrency does. And just a second. Sorry for all the interruptions. It's midnight here. So DAGNITE, which is the brainchild of Michael Sutton and Jonathan Sompolinsky, is both provides both strong liveness and self-scaling, which has two far-reaching consequences. The first is that you don't need to take this safety margin. You can operate as fast as you can. So if the network latency, if it's not quite linearly directly proportional, but I'm assuming that if right now on Kaspa you can confirm transactions in 10 seconds with some confidence, and in DAGNITE you would obtain the same confidence within 2 or 3 seconds. But the other far-reaching consequence, which is the one relevant to your question, is that if the conditions of the network deteriorate, then the security doesn't deteriorate, only the confirmation times adjust. And this means that Kaspa outperforms Bitcoin right now when the internet is very fast in terms of confirmation times. But if we reach a point where confirmation times, where Kaspa needs 30 minutes to confirm a transaction, then we've also reached a point where Bitcoin has fallen completely. So in both regimes, DAGNITE provides benefits that are impossible on any other protocol that I know of. And in particular, in the scenario of a network calamity where the network is so degraded that even Bitcoin becomes insecure, DAGNITE would still stand.
So with say you did have a big calamity in the internet, and like say, I don't know, half the population or half the world had a cutout of internet for a sustained period of time. Why would that affect the security of Bitcoin? Is it because they'd actually get more, they'd get more orphan blocks, and that would make them susceptible to an attack?
Well, so if the power goes down on half the world, it's definitely is a calamity, but it's not what I meant when I said a calamity. Because if right now all of Europe gets cut out of power, but the rest of the world remains the same, then for whoever remains with the internet latency is gonna stay the same. Now, the security is going to drop because you're gonna have less miners, less people who mine, lower hash rate, cheaper attacks, right? But that's not the point here. The point here is, when I talked about a calamity, I didn't mean that a lot of people are thrown off the internet. I mean that, say, like someone cuts all of the underwater cables, and you only can communicate between, you have two huge hubs like the USA and Europe, and they are both still operating, but they are communicating with each other very slowly, and on both sides you have a lot of miners. What happens then? And this is the calamity that Bitcoin couldn't face, and Kaspa couldn't face, or Ghost couldn't face, but DAGNITE could.
Awesome. And I think because when I heard that as well, because obviously I've never even realised that this was a thing until I heard Jonathan speak about it, and I just thought this is a really big deal actually. If you can become sort of internet chaos resistant, that is, I mean, that is massive for anyone really, for any business, for any individual, to know that, like you said, if you had a calamity like that, that you would still have a secure network. I mean, that's massive. So yeah, I
Yeah,
think that
when I've heard this idea for the first time, and it's not a new idea, it's been going around. I think, yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the first thing you think about when you hear about about Dark Knight. Like the first thing you're saying is, "Whoa, first confirmations," and the second thing you think about is, "Whoa, slow confirmations," instead of breaking down. I mean, is the two two consequences that jump right at you. And I remember my first thought was, okay, so now you solved how to blockchain when the internet is dead. You need to stop solving stuff because I'm still having a hard time convincing people that we solved the trilemma. So, but yeah, it is a big deal, especially with the directions, the scary directions that geopolitics seems to be might be taking. I don't want to like say it will, but I mean it's more plausible than ever, and it's best to be ready. And I think this in itself gives a lot of value.
100%. Because and the other thing as well, I know Kaspa KII are wanting to launch a node into space, a Kaspa node. I think if they manage to do that and it's quite successful, it'd actually be quite interesting to see if they launch a node or can manage to launch a node into space when Dagnite is implemented. Because I think that you'd have a real test there, wouldn't you, to see, well, I'd assume you would anyway, on how latency would work.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the nice thing about Dark Knight, I mean, it's true in general that transaction confirmation is subjective, right? At least in proof of work. There isn't this, it's not like the protocol decides when a transaction is confirmed. You can just look at the state of the protocol and state of the network and derive from it how much confidence you have that a transaction is not going to revert and decide if it's enough confidence for you. And you do it all the time without even knowing. That's what you do when you wait for 6 Bitcoin blocks. That's what you do when you wait for 10 Kaspa confirmations. Granted, someone else did the math and told you what's the correct number, but still, this is the motivation here. And yet, the entire theoretical world of distributed computation and the way they are reasoned about, always assumes that that considering a transaction complete is something deterministic decided by the protocol. Now, I think the main genius of Dagnite is that it manages in a very formal, very rigorous way to departure from that and provide a correct model for a distributed computation world where the fact that a transaction was completed is a subjective decision made by each node in the network individually. So even if you have a node in space, then this node could look at the network. I'm thinking about a mining node, right? Or maybe not even a mining node, but this node could look at the network and decide to wait longer from confirmation compared with nodes that are here on Earth. And this is like an extreme version of if in the calamity you see that 80% of the nodes are in Europe and of the mining power is in Europe, 20% of the mining power is in the United States, then you would uh, um, accept confirmed transaction faster in Europe than in the United States because you get more information faster. And it is this subjectiveness that allows this robust flexibility in confirmations in the Ignite.
It's such exciting stuff, man, and I totally get what you're saying as well. With Kaspa needs to stop solving these problems because these are huge problems. Like normally you solve one problem at a time, but for some reason Kaspa's I don't know whether it was thought out beforehand, but it seems to be solving so many problems all at once. That's actually quite a good question. Actually, do you know if this was already pre-thought about? Like, was say like MEV resistance and the oracles and things like the internet chaos resistance, was that something that was already thought about when Kaspa first I don't know come around, or is this just a consequence of things as time's moved on?
Yeah, well, the inner machinations of Jonathan's mind are an enigma, but I believe that he was aware on some level that these merge sets are actually asynchronous bits of information that need to be coheved into something using retroactive hindsight of the protocol, and that this could be used to do all sorts of interesting stuff. I don't know if at this point it was like a nice idea. I don't know at what point he came up with this like second place bidding for MEV resistance. I don't know if it's a 2017 idea or 2021 idea. But I can tell you this, and this is something that a lot of people who did theory and math experience, that once you have the right definition, the right idea, the right entity, the right thing, then things seem to fall into place. And GhostDAG makes so much sense in its simplicity and in how it is such a simple yet so powerful and so far-reaching generalization of Bitcoin that it kind of has to solve a lot of problems, because usually problems are just a consequence of working in a narrow framework. And the narrow framework here is that Satoshi implemented GhostDAG, but he set K to 0. And then Jonathan came up and say, we can set K to anything and let's see what happens. And just it smoothed out a lot of the pathologies or a lot of the threshold phenomena that were essentially the reasons for a lot of these problems.
Absolutely love that. And yeah, I could only imagine Jonathan's mind is an enigma. We had Mike Zack up here once, and he said like we were just about starting to work on 1 block per second, and Jonathan's already talking about 100, and he was like, "I'll just let me focus on this first. Let's all focus on just one, and then we can work out 100 later." So he's obviously an extreme visionary, which is fantastic, and it's why we got to this point where we are now.
I don't know if they remember this. I definitely remember this. You just like what you said, just pulled out an old memory that I haven't thought about in years, and I wonder if either Jonathan or Mike even remember this. But I remember we were sitting to lunch at Dag Labs, and then we were eating, and then Yoni said something about 100 blocks per second, and then Mike tells him, I'm going to do the first block per second, and then you can do the rest of the 99.
That sounds exactly like something you'd say as well. Oh, love it. Listen, Shai, I know you. I really, really, really do appreciate your time, man. This has been such a really good space, and good.
Was
Again,
terrific.
Sorry, Shai, I'll cut you off.
I just said I agree, and it was terrific.
It really was. It was. I love these sort of blockchain banters because I actually feel like I'm learning loads, which is good. I'm always trying to seek out knowledge as much as possible. But again, Gaurav, I want to really thank you as well.
Me too.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time because I know it was extremely early for you when you started as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chris and Shai. Yeah, thank you for giving me an opportunity. It was early. It's believe it or not, it's 5:15 a.m. now. It started at 3 a.m. So, but yeah, I didn't want to miss this opportunity. But thank you.
Wow,
Blimey, I
that's
didn't
commitment.
realise it was that early. So I really do appreciate your time, and it's been a fantastic space as well because of the quality of your questions. I could never have been able to ask those questions because I didn't know what half of them meant. But I will do some more research. But again, massive thank you to both of you and to everyone who came here. I'm going to let you go, Shai, because I know it's extremely late for you and Gaurav extremely early for you as well. So I bet you're both knackered.
Yeah, definitely. But as usual, thanks for having me. Thanks, Gaurav, for a very productive and stimulation conversation. Loved your questions. And thank everyone for tuning in. Everyone have a great day, night, morning, ungodly early morning, or whatever the time it is around you. Uh, see you around, folks.
Thanks, Shai.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.
Really appreciate your time, man. And Gaurav, I really do appreciate it. Just before you go, I wanted to mention that next week we've got a Crescendo launch party happening. 1 hour before Crescendo launches, we are going to be going live. So if you are around, then would love to have you join us again.
Maybe I will join, mostly as a listener. I don't like to butt in on this crescendo centralized stuff because I think people tend to think that I had like a substantial part in Crescendo. I didn't. The most major contribution I did for Crescendo was choosing the name. So I usually don't like to make the optics as though Crescendo was, like I was a part of it, because it's really easy for people to think that way. And if I'll be around, I'll drop and say hi. I don't want, like to be anywhere near the center of this event.
No worries, man. Appreciate you. And again, thank you for coming tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure having you up.
Sure, it's been delightful. See you around, guys. Bye.
Awesome. Well, I don't know about everyone else, but I really have learned a hell of a lot. I think these are quite interesting topics as well because they're ones that I see thrown around a lot in the crypto space, but a lot of the time, not many people have answers to them. So to have Shai up here and explain it is incredible. Like I said, not that I understand most of it, but it has been really good learning experience for me, and I'll be using Grok a lot later. Anyway, I think that's about it then, is it, Lavendi?
Yeah, I think we've come to a nice close for today's show, man. It's been another banger. Like you said, there's a lot of lessons were had or going to be had once we run a few things through Grok, like you say, mate. I've been vigorously typing in the back end already. Some of these conversations that were being had in Grok, and I have learned whilst that was going on. So it's been very interesting. I'm not going to lie. I thought it was going to go over my head fully. But it didn't, and it shows I'm actually grasping the technology and it's all put together now, man. It's good. This journey has been amazing. Tell you the truth.
Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, this episode's been a lot more blockchain focused and very tiny banter focused, but I don't think that's a bad thing. It's like I said, it's good to have these really deep diving, knowledgeable conversations. I think it's brilliant. And that Gurav, honestly, what a legend he was as well. The majority of Bitcoiners we've had up here, Lavendi, have been actually critical thinkers, and it's not really been a showdown. I don't know. I think a lot of the Bitcoiners that I come across that really just shut Kaspa down probably would never come to a space like this, because I think once that you're sort of backed into a corner, then you have to listen and look at the tech, and then when they do, they have to then agree that the tech is better than Bitcoin's. So that's probably why we don't get those types of people on it.
Do you know what? You're probably not wrong, to be honest with you. It's like you said, every Bitcoiner that's come through has known exactly what they're talking about and has embraced everything around them as well, in terms of Casper, in terms of anything else. So it's been very productive conversations up here between everyone, and it's amazing to see in some of the chats that we've got, group chats and whatnot, with community and in private, we getting some positive feedbacks about this specific thing, to be honest, and been asking us to bring them back up. I know Landy's been enjoying himself coming and joining our spaces the last couple of weeks, and I've already mentioned to him that we've got the Crescendo launch party next week, and yeah, he should be coming through as well to see what's going on and go through Crescendo with us.
That would be incredible. Landy's fantastic. Again, really, really knowledgeable and decent bloke to have up on our show. So I'm glad he joins, especially for the past two spaces we've had. Really good insights from him. So yeah, it would be fantastic to have him on the Crescendo live one. We're starting that at 3 o'clock. Is it 3 o'clock UTC or 2 o'clock UTC?
So 3 p.m. UK time. I think 2 p.m. Yeah, 2 p.m. UTC, 10 a.m. Eastern, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that's right.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very early one for us, especially since we've gone almost 12 months consistently around 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. our time. So it'd be the first time on a Monday would be going live at that time, but it's for a very, very, very special cause. So it's going to be a good one, man. 7 days away from Crescendo. It's all exciting. I know the timeline has been buzzing for it all year. And I can't wait to see how that unfolds as well on the build up to the launch.
100%. And this is because I can't remember who put it. I saw it in a chat somewhere. Someone said this is pretty much our last blockchain banter at 1 block per second. Hopefully by the next one we're going to 10 blocks per second. So yeah, exciting stuff.
Do you know what? It was what's his? Where is he? It was in the blockchain banter chat. If you're not in the blockchain banter chat, let me know or let us know, and then we'll get you added in there. It's on X. This was please hammer, don't hurt them. The last Monday blockchain banter before 10 BPS. Little did he know at the time that we were going to be going live at 3 p.m. next week. But here you go. We've got one more in us, mate. One more at 1 BPS before we get there.
Yeah, and about an hour's worth of 1 BPS before we transition into 10. That would be fantastic. I'm really, really, really looking forward to that one. It would be a good show, I think. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be good anyway because the Crescendo update is going to be huge. So I really, really can't wait for it. Genuinely,
absolutely.
Been a long time coming, man.
Yeah, do you know what? Since we started the blockchain banter, we've been talking about it nonstop. There's not been a week where we've missed speaking about 10 BPS. I don't think.
No, I don't think there has been. Yeah, so what a journey for us as well.
Yeah, huge, man, huge. What are we? 48. We're 6 weeks away from a year.
Oh Christ, that's insane.
Crazy.
Been going for a year
consistently as well. We'd never missed a day. Well, a week even.
Mental.
Yeah. Do you know what? Speaking of shows, while we're on this topic, it's a good segue into Sunday Roast this week. 2nd episode, man. I am so looking forward to that. Day before Crescendo as well. So you better believe there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to be roasting. You know, the chat's gone crazy the last 3 weeks, man. Like so many things I've been posting in there. You guys been posting that so roastable, if that's the word. It's fucking great.
So roastable, that's a brilliant word. But I've got my eyes on Crypto J. He's the one that is so roastable. It's unreal. He's been giving me
My
such
God.
stick in the background. It's unreal.
How's it?
What his favourite one he done while I was talking to Shy was, let me find it. You posted it. Those delays were Shy thinking, how do I dumb this down enough for Chris? I've heard he is an iPhone user that makes this even harder. Oh, Christ.
Oh, it's got me in tears. I'm sorry.
They're good roasts, man.
Good,
I love
yeah.
them. Keep them coming.
Yeah, man, that's great. Even though this, we've butchered the crap out of this war we've been having, me and you, right? But it's still coming. I don't. We just get dragged right back into the front lines. It's awesome. There's never a dull moment, I don't think, with this.
I don't even have an iPhone. I've got a Nokia. We've just done it for fun. No, I'm joking.
Can you imagine?
We've milked this one way too dry, but we'll
proper.
keep going. I mean, if there's milk in it, we'll keep going.
Oh man, I think on that note, it's time to end, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure up here with you, Chris, as always. And yeah, really looking forward to the roast on Sunday. Really looking forward to crescendo, as we've been saying on the Monday. So for me, it's a good night, and see you then.
Yeah, and for me, just one last massive thank you to all the speakers that have been up here today, and also for Crypto Pumps as well. He always has been live streaming these now for a good 3, 4, 5 episodes now. So yeah, massive thank you to Crypto Pumps. If you go over to his YouTube channel, give it a like, give it a subscribe. He's a great Caspian, and yeah, he's doing some incredible work for us by live streaming. So we never not record an episode. So massive thank you to Crypto Pumps, and then a massive thank you to everybody in the audience for taking the time to come and listen to us. Without you, we really wouldn't have a show, and it does mean a lot to us. So thank you so much. We hope you came. I can't remember the bloody sign-off line, Lavendi. I butchered it.
Oh,
we hope you came for the blockchain but stayed for the banter.
There we go. Let's go. You didn't butcher anything, mate. Let's go. Nice one. Have a good night,
Fantastic.
everybody.
Yeah, you too. See you later, guys.